Hey, Jim.
Hi. Says I have 9 approved, which are the participants. I'm going to email all the attendees right now, though, and see if they have a problem.
Hey, Jim. Are we recording?
Not yet, so we go.
Okay, so we'll get started with the presentation. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Protect Your Home presentation. We are all hoping that this presentation will be helpful in giving an overview of the kinds of issues you might face as a homeowner. Next slide. The presentation is brought to you by three different.
Hold on a quick second, please. I'm sorry. Something's going on with the, of course, with the PowerPoint.
Okay. We're having
We'll edit that part out, Sally. So anyone watching, this is not Sally's fault. It's a technical difficulty. I promise they should be limited. We've only tried this like 3 other times.
Great. I just remember seeing the presentation as I was giving it before, but just want to take this time to welcome our attendees. Great. Okay, so I'm assuming that we're all looking at the same screen now and that we're actually on slide 2. Next slide, please. Great, thank you. So this presentation is brought to you by 3 different organizations: Bay Area Legal Aid, Legal Aid of Sonoma County, and East Bay Community Law Center, with financial support from the State Bar Association of California. My name is Sally Hong, and I am a staff attorney with the Consumer Law Unit at Bay Area Legal Aid. My 2 colleagues from Bay Area Legal Aid, Noah Zinner and Rachel Havercorn, and I will be presenting today. Bay Area Legal Aid is the largest civil legal services provider in the Bay Area. We assist client populations in 7 Bay Area counties, including Alameda, San Francisco, Santa Clara, San Mateo, Napa, and Marin, and we provide assistance in areas such as housing, domestic violence, reentry, health insurance, healthcare access, veterans law, youth law, economic justice, social security, and of course, consumer law, which is what home ownership issues fall under. We are joined by Legal Aid of Sonoma County. Would you like to introduce yourself, Kendall?
Sure, thanks, Sally. So my name is Kendall Jarvis. I'm the lead disaster relief attorney for Legal Aid of Sonoma County. We started the disaster relief program in 2017 after the Sonoma complex fires. Since that time, unfortunately, we've had 4 additional disasters in our county and surrounding areas. And we basically help people / survivors through the recovery process. And as part of that process, we help with consumer issues such as the issues that we're discussing today. Outside of our program, Legal Aid also helps with a wide array of things, as I'm sure you will find that we all do, Barry Legal Aid, East Bay Community Law Center, as well as ourselves, with things such as housing, employment, domestic violence, elder abuse, homeless prevention, vets, etc. Thanks, Sally.
Thank you for that introduction. We are also joined by Kara of East Bay Community Law Center. Kara, do you mind introducing yourself, please?
Sure. Hi, my name is Kara Acevedo. I'm a staff attorney at the Consumer Justice Clinic of the East Bay Community Law Center. We're a free legal services provider for low-income residents of Alameda County, and we are a clinic of Berkeley Law School.
Great. Thank you so much for those introductions. Next slide, please. Our presenters will be presenting on the following topics: recognizing and addressing home improvement scams, preventing foreclosure, and resolving judgment liens. And if you type in your questions into the chat box, we will have a Q&A session at the end. So my colleague, Rachel Kendall from Legal Aid of Sonoma County, and I will start with recognizing and addressing home improvement scams. So next slide, please. As a homeowner, you may be interested in undertaking some home improvement projects. For example, you might be interested in replacing a roof or converting to a solar energy system or building out your garage for some extra space. And you will want to work with a contractor to make these changes to your home. But there are some red flags you want to watch out for when you begin a home improvement project. For example, if you are sold home improvements you didn't ask for, if the deal sounds too good to be true, or you are told you'll have to pay for the you will not have to pay for the improvements, or that they will be paid through your taxes or through a government program where that will allow you to have these home improvement projects for free, or the contractor pressures you to sign documents before you've read or understood them, or you're not given copies of signed documents, or the scope of the work is not detailed in the contract, or the contractor fails to complete the work or refuses to work until you pay more than what you agreed initially, or the contractor puts a mechanics lien on your property, then these are all red flags that you want to watch out for. And some bad actors may also target vulnerable populations. Not that slide, please. Back. Thank you. Some bad actors may also target vulnerable populations, such as the elderly or limited English speakers. And home improvement projects can also include solar energy systems installations. Next slide, please. I'm sure many of you have received ads for solar panels, which may include language about the incredible amount of savings you might get if you switch to solar. However, keep in mind that if you're already on a in a PG&E program for low-income families, such as CARE or FARA, the savings comparison might actually be very slim. And I think a lot of solar companies may advertise tax credits as an incentive for installing solar panels. But keep in mind that if you're low income, you may not benefit very much from the tax credit, and that there are specific criteria for this tax credit. So you will want to look into that before you sign anything. For example, one of the criteria is that you have to own your home and the solar panels. And but the thing is, a lot of solar panels also lease out their solar panels. Sorry, a lot of solar companies also lease out their solar panels, sometimes for 10, 20 years. But if it's leased out to you, then you won't get that tax credit. And for solar panels that are leased out to you, if you want to remove your solar panels earlier than the agreed upon period, you probably will be charged some sort of penalty, so you will need to check your contract for that. And sometimes in the process of installing solar panels, solar companies can damage your roof. Or there's some maintenance issues, and then you might find it very difficult to get them to come out to fix the roof or do some maintenance issues, fix the maintenance issues with the solar panels. And so you probably want to be able to take a good look at the contract to make sure what the process is for resolving those damages to your roof or for maintenance issues. Now my colleague will talk specifically about PACE issues.
Thanks, Sally. Hi, my name is Rachel Havercorn, and along with Sally and Noah, I'm an attorney in the consumer protection practice at Bay Area Legal Aid. So I'm going to go over the PACE funding program briefly. Some of you may be familiar with PACE loans. PACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. PACE is a home improvement loan program advertised as an opportunity for homeowners to make green improvements without paying upfront. So these green improvements are supposed to be energy efficient upgrades like solar installation, energy efficient windows or doors, cool roofing, or water conservation improvements. Although PACE sometimes, these loans have been used for projects that are entirely unrelated to efficiency. The PACE program operates through administrator companies. Some administrators that may sound familiar to you are Y-Green, PACE Funding, Hero, Renew Financial, Fortify, or Renovate America. So this PACE program is advertised sometimes as free home improvements, but they are not. The cost and financing charges of these improvements are added to the owner's property tax bill. And this program has led to some serious problems for homeowners. Go to the next slide, please, Jim. So we have seen numerous complaints about the PACE program in our practices. The program is rife with scams, contractor misrepresentations, fraud, overpricing, incomplete or even non-existent work. The way that PACE is financed results in a super priority lien on property, as well as an increase in property taxes. And because of this, it potentially leads to foreclosure proceedings. For example, in one case, a $65,000 PACE loan raised the homeowner's property bill from about $400 a year to $6,700 a year. And these huge spikes in property taxes can lead to foreclosure. Because of these huge increases in tax bills, a property owner could be at risk of either a tax sale or a foreclosure by the mortgage lender. If a homeowner pays property taxes through an escrow account with the mortgage company, then the mortgage company will pay this tax balance for the homeowner and then demand reimbursement. And if the homeowner is not able to pay their full property tax bill, or if the mortgage company paid the balance and the homeowner is not able to repay them, then the homeowner may face foreclosure. I'm going to now turn it over to Kendall to go over some strategies to avoid fraudulent practices.
Thanks, Rachel. As Rachel and Sally mentioned, my name is Kendall Jarvis with Legal Aid of Sonoma County. As part of the work that we do for survivors in the community, we basically help consumers/survivors deal with the construction and rebuilding process and our home repair process. So the piece I'm going to focus on is going to be short and sweet, but simple ways to basically attempt to prevent home improvement fraud and or contractual issues that can end up becoming way more of a pain than necessary. So some of this stuff is going to sound really obvious, but it is tried and true and generally consistently works. So the first thing when dealing with a contractor is that you want to research that contractor. You want to know how long they've been in business, how many homes have they built or rebuilt, how many projects of the nature that you're requesting their assistance for have been completed by them, and do they have any complaints with as a result of those projects. One of the easiest ways to do that is to look at the California Contractor State Licensing Board. As you see, the website is below, and you can essentially search someone's license status as well as the license status of their business. So you absolutely want to make sure the contractor you work with is licensed and bonded by the state, as well as the subcontractors that they work with to ensure the quality of your work and that there is essentially recourse if that work is subpar in the end. Secondarily, this may also seem simplistic because we do it all the time, but you want to request references. Any good contractor that has a relationship with a community and with which it's working would generally have references to be able to provide you. People that say, yes, I've worked with this contractor, this is what worked, this is what didn't work. And keep in mind, they don't all have to be perfect references, but you want to know what to expect, and you want to know that they have a connection to the community within which they're working. And third, again, seems simple, but read your contract. Most of the time, we get contracts all the time, and we don't necessarily think that much about them until we actually need to use the terms of the contract. In a project with this kind of funding, where you're putting a lot of money up front, whether it's a repair or a rebuild, you want to make sure you absolutely understand your contract. If there are terms in the contract that you do not understand, you absolutely want to have that conversation, A, with your contractor, and B, with legal support, like through one of our agencies under private counsel. It's also really important to note that many people think that a contract that they're provided is given and the terms are just what they are. That's not necessarily true in the rebuild or repair situation. So if there are terms that you don't feel comfortable with, absolutely talk to your contractor and see if those terms can be changed. And finally, this also seems simple, do not pay all costs up front. So generally speaking, in California, a contractor, subcontractor, or materials supplier cannot charge you for work until it's completed or the materials are literally delivered on site. Regardless of that point, many times people turn money over to a contractor or subcontractor, not realizing that they have that control. Unfortunately, it is often the person who holds on to the purse strings that ends up having more authority or, let's say, leverage in the situation. So it's really important to be very clear that you will pay when the work is completed to your satisfaction. And if there are issues with the work, according to how you agreed to pay in the contract, then you need to have those discussions along the way and not wait until the end. And again, just to reiterate, definitely look at the contractor state license board and make sure that everyone working on your property is licensed. Next slide, please. So what happens if all of these smart tips I've given you don't work? Unfortunately, that's just a reality of construction, that there are often disparities between what a homeowner believes is supposed to happen and what a contractor actually does and or believes is supposed to happen. So again, we can't reiterate enough, use the contractor state licensing board. One, you can search the license and its status, as we said, but two, you can also file a complaint through them or what's called a request for assistance. You can do that online. Their website was on the prior slide. And as part of that, essentially the contractor state licensing board will provide you with a semi-neutral individual that will talk to you, then we'll talk to your builder, contractor, or subcontractor and attempt to help you resolve the complaint. I recommend trying to use the administrative process before doing something more severe because A, that's what it's there for, and B, litigation in this arena can get really, really costly and expensive and can take a lot of time. So if these issues are resolvable, they are definitely best to be resolved from a negotiating standpoint. Another important point that I know Rachel and Sally also brought up is that mechanics liens, essentially. A mechanics lien is something that be filed on your property if a contractor has done work on your property and or a materials supplier has left materials that they can't recoup. So like they, delivered wood and that's already gone into the framing. So they can't just come back and take the wood out. The mechanics lien process is designed to protect contractors and subcontractors in the event of non-payment. However, it can also become problematic if there's a dispute between the homeowner and the contractor. So you want to check your title. You can do that with the county recorder's office. You want to make sure that there aren't any liens against your property, both before and during the construction, contract, rebuild / repair process. But you also want to educate yourself on the process in general, because the easiest way to basically challenge a mechanics lien is at the administrative level when it goes through the city or county. If it passes through that and goes on to the litigation process, that takes a lot more work and again, a lot more money, a lot more time, and a lot more effort. So there are some easy reasons you can challenge a mechanics lien through an administrative defense, such as your contractor didn't give you notice, or they didn't give you proper service, meaning you didn't actually get the paperwork you were supposed to get to warn you of the lien itself. Two, that they filed the lien outside of the time period. So there are certain situations where the time varies a bit, but generally you have between 60 and 90 days as a contractor to file a mechanics lien from the last day that you did work on the job. However, contractors sometimes still file them even after that period because it's hard to basically keep track of that. If you have a defense to say, you know, actually it's been 105 days since my contractor was here, so this mechanics lien filing isn't valid, that is a very easy way to get it dismissed, and it's a very easy way to protect yourself and your interests. And then also the general basis that there are just potential lien application errors. And finally, seeking legal assistance is something that is absolutely important to do. You can call one of our agencies and talk to us. Obviously, you can call private counsel. There are many people who are very knowledgeable on this subject. And on the final note, I will say one thing that many people don't know or aren't aware of is that your state legislature / your state representatives have basically an obligation to look into any agency handling of complaint issues. So if you file a complaint with the California Contractor State Licensing Board and it wasn't handled correctly, it didn't work out, you have complaints about the process, whatever, it's also a good idea to reach out to your state representative and just say, hey, can you look into this for me? Because I don't think it was adequately handled. Thank you so much.
We're just going to go to the next slide, Jim.
Hello, my name is Noah Zinner. I'm with Bay Area Legal Aid, and Kara and I are going to talk about the foreclosure process and also property liens and what to do about them. So let's start with foreclosure. So when we talk about foreclosure in California, we are almost always, and when I say almost always, 99.9% of the time, talking about a process called non-judicial foreclosure. And so when I talk about foreclosure, that's what I'm talking about. And what non-judicial foreclosure is rather than some sort of a case in court, which almost never happens, you have a series of notices that get recorded with the county recorder's office and mailed or posted on your property, followed by a auction of your home in a public place after a public posting. And the process is pretty drawn out. We're going to go through sort of the fastest timeline that you could expect to experience. And we'll talk about it in the context of mortgages first. But then we'll talk about all of your options in the meantime. A lot of folks right now, as they were back in 2008, 2009, but also now with COVID and the harm to our economy that we experienced, may have fallen behind on their mortgage payments. There are options under federal law that specifically address, give homeowners rights when they are unable to make their payments due to COVID. We'll get into those in a moment. The first thing that happens in the foreclosure process is that somebody falls behind on their payments. Under federal law, after 120 days, during which you haven't made any payments on your mortgage, the foreclosure process can start. And in California, it starts with the mortgage company or a business acting on its behalf, recording a notice of default, something called a notice of default, an election to sell under deed of trust. Now, this is an official notice. It's recorded with the county recorders and it's mailed to you. And it tells you information about the entity that owns your loan, as well as the amount that you're behind on your loan. And it is often mailed, multiple copies will be mailed to you. When this is recorded, you'll note that this is a public record and that there are scammers who will look through public records to see if people are struggling with paying their mortgage and reach out to you and make it look like official notices and say they might have something that they call a notice of default, but it's not the official notice of default, an election to sell under deed of trust. Be very careful about people who approach you with schemes to save your home after the notice of default has been recorded, and in particular because, again, it's a public notice and there are scammers looking for it. So in California, after that notice of default gets recorded, the mortgage company needs to wait 3 months, after which they can mail, record, and post a notice of trustee sale. And when I say post, it gets posted to the front door of your home or on your property in a place that that's visible. And the notice of trustee sale will give a sale date, and that sale date cannot be any sooner than 21 days from the date of the notice. And it'll give the location of the sale, and it'll give the total amount of debt. And following that 21-day period, 21-day plus period, your property can be sold. Until and even after that, nobody can force you out of your home, and you're free to go ahead and contact your mortgage servicer or to get assistance trying to figure out what options you have to avoid foreclosure. The only person who can actually get you out of your home, although you may have people coming up who say, I own this home now, for example, and you need to get out. The only way you can actually be put out of your home is after an eviction. So not only would your home have to be sold, but then afterwards you would have to be given notice and time to leave. And then an eviction proceeding would have to start. And only then, after a judgment, could the sheriff come and actually get you put out. But in the meantime, there are plenty of opportunities to try and save your home. So next slide, please. So some of the options to avoid foreclosure, one is called forbearance. So this is actually, there is a forbearance plan as part of the CARES Act that was enacted on a federal level in response to foreclosure. In response to COVID, apologies. And what forbearance means is that your mortgage company is not saying that you don't owe money for a certain amount of months. You still have the same monthly payment, but they are saying that they will allow you to not make those monthly payments and to make them at a later date. So for example, you might have a monthly payment of $1,000 and your mortgage company might allow you, based on hardship or based on the CARES Act, to request a forbearance where you don't have to make payments for 6 months. However, at the end of those 6 months, those payments are due. So you would owe $6,000 at the end of those 6 months. Now that works for some people if you have a momentary setback, if you need some time to explore other options. But again, it creates a problem because at the end, you have to come up with a lump sum to catch up. Another option is called loan modification, and loan modification is an actual change to the terms of your loan. Most what are called federally related mortgages, so Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, and USDA, VA mortgages have some sort of loan modification programs. And what those are programs for homeowners who are struggling to make their payments, but can afford to make them going forward as long as they're sort of the payments are reduced somewhat, the interest rate might be reduced a little bit, or the amount of time you have to pay it back might be extended. As long as you can show you can afford to make the modified payments, whatever you're behind can be brought into the principal of the loan, and you can get a loan modification to bring you current and allow you to make payments going forward. So that's another option for you. In a repayment plan, that would essentially be, let's say you get to the end of your 6 months and you owe this $6,000 and you can't pay it all in one lump sum. That might be an agreement with your mortgage servicer, your mortgage company, to make your regular payment plus a smaller payment over time in order to catch up on that deficit. So that would be a repayment plan. There are special forbearance and repayment options that come with disaster relief, maybe available even through FEMA or through federal mortgage programs. Another option would be reinstatement. That's simply, as we were talking about, that would be paying the full $6,000 to bring your loan current. It's important to remember in California, you can request what's called a reinstatement quote from your mortgage company. And they will have to give you at any point in the foreclosure process up until 5 days before foreclosure, they will have to give you a notice that tells you how much you have to pay to catch up on your mortgage, and you have the right to pay that amount and be brought current and stop the foreclosure sale. You also might be able to pay off the loan either through by selling your home or by refinancing with a more affordable loan, or sometimes with something called a reverse mortgage, although that's something you want to explore with caution. It's a type of mortgage that's available to seniors. But these are all options. And what's critical, if you go to the next slide, Jim. What's critical is that I know a lot of times when people, because I've seen it, when people are struggling to pay their bills, and particularly their mortgage, because it's such an important bill, it keeps a roof over your head, that often the instinct is to sort of wait for your situation to change and maybe even sort of hide from that issue. With mortgages and with foreclosure, it's critical to get help as soon as possible. So the first place that you can check to find out what sort of options and programs they have for you is your mortgage servicer themselves. And there's a specific department within each mortgage loan servicer, this is the mortgage company you make your payments to, called loss mitigation. And they are required under federal and state law to provide you with a representative who can talk to you about your options and be a single point of contact, one person you can contact to discuss your options and your changed situation. Another option is a free housing counselor who's been certified by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. These are housing counselors who are trained on the various programs available for mortgage relief. But again, these are important to do as soon as you know you're having trouble paying your mortgage, because you need to, you don't want to wait until the foreclosure process is in its late stage to start trying to get help. And as I mentioned earlier, beware of people who solicit you. These foreclosure notices are public. There are scammers who watch for them. When there are a high amount, or even when there are high numbers of struggling mortgages, and there are right now a lot of struggling homeowners. There are entire companies who try and make money by targeting homeowners who are in the foreclosure process and promising them services that are imaginary or entirely unhelpful, and getting thousands of dollars from people based on promises that they never intend to keep. So it's important that you get help, and it's important that you get the right help. Next slide, please. The other type of debts that we see use the foreclosure process commonly are homeowner associations. There are a shocking amount of Californians who live within a homeowners association, somewhere around 30%. Homeowners associations, when you buy your home in a homeowners association, there is what comes with it, what are called CCRs, and they're a list of rules and guidelines under which that sort of regulate the property with respect to the other houses in the homeowners associations. And homeowners associations are allowed to charge assessments in order to maintain the property and the HOA. They are also allowed, if you don't pay these assessments, they're allowed to foreclose on them, but with very specific restrictions. They cannot foreclose on you if you owe less than $1,800 in assessments. And again, that's just your monthly charge that you would normally pay to your HOA. It does not include the late fees, the collection penalties, whatever other things that the collection agency might lump on there. It's just the assessments. There has to be more than $1,800 in assessments, or your payments have to be at least 12 months behind. Next slide. When you are struggling to pay your homeowners association fees, you often end up with a collection company. The collection companies often, either deliberately or because they are not aware of it or not really willing to tell you what your rights are, they do a really poor job of letting you know how you can avoid foreclosure. What they want you to do is pay them all their fees and to enter into these payment plans where really you have the threat of you have to live under the threat of foreclosure until you finish paying these companies off. You always have the option to pay down your actual assessment debt, and have this applied to, your assessments before it's applied to any of your fees and costs. The HOA can still try and come after you for the fees and costs, although they normally don't, in a separate civil action, but you can pay the assessment debt and avoid foreclosure. So an example, let's say you owe $5,000 in past due homeowners assessments, and that amount includes collection costs, interest, and late fees. If your actual assessment balance was only $2,000 of that, you could pay that $2,000. You could actually even pay $300, get below the $1,800 amount, and avoid foreclosure. But again, you need to be clear about what your rights are and where that's money is going when you're negotiating with the collection companies on your homeowners association debt. But you do have a right to pay off your assessments if you dispute all the fees, and then to separately deal with your fees. And I believe next, Kara is going to speak about liens.
So what if the issue isn't that you're behind in your mortgage payments? What if the issue instead is that you are being sued by a creditor? How at risk is your home really? So debts can use your house or property like your car as collateral as part of the loan or contract, or they cannot include that in the contract, and those are called unsecured debts. If a loan is secured with some kind of property like your house, the creditor does not need to sue you in order to take your house if you fall behind on payments, because you've already agreed in the contract that the creditor can take the property if you fail to pay. So this would be like a repossession of your car if you fall behind on payments, or a foreclosure sale. But unsecured creditors, like a credit card, can sue you also if you fall behind on the agreement. If an unsecured creditor wins a lawsuit against you, they can then place a lien on your property. And what this lien does is it puts them in line to be paid when the property changes hands. Next slide. So there are some protections for homeowners against unsecured creditors in California. As of this January 2021, your home cannot be forced to be sold to pay an unsecured consumer judgment lien, like a credit card. Next slide. There's also something under California law called a homestead exemption. California homeowners are entitled to protect between $300,000 and $600,000 of equity in their home from unsecured creditors. So that amount of equity gets based on the countywide median sale price for a single family home in the calendar year before the year that you're claiming the exemption. This exemption is for unsecured creditors, so it doesn't apply to mortgages, property tax liens like PACE liens, or existing secured debts and liens. And those will still get paid before you get this chunk of equity through the homestead exemption. Next slide, please. There's also a protection that you can put on your home called a homestead declaration. This is important because it applies to both forced sales and voluntary sales. So the automatic thing I was just talking about only applies if you are being forced to sell your home. But a homestead declaration is something that gives you protection if you voluntarily decide to sell your home. It exempts profits from a voluntary sale, and you can actually keep them and put them into a new home as long as you purchase it within 6 months. Next slide. So for example, let's say you sell your home, and after all the real estate sale costs, there's $820,000 in profit. The first $200,000 in profit would go to the mortgage if that's what you still owe on your mortgage. Let's say you have a secured loan that you took out for $5,000, they would get paid too. There's a credit card company that sued you previously before you filed this homestead declaration, and they won a lawsuit and recorded a lien. So they get paid the $15,000 you owe them too. However, there's $600,000 left. Let's say you still have 3 more credit card companies that have judgments against you totaling $200,000. They haven't filed liens though, and you have your homestead exemption declaration exemption in place. You're entitled to the full $600,000 before any of those remaining creditors get paid. And as long as you put that into a new home within 6 months, the judgment creditors have to find another way to try and collect their judgment. So how do you file a homestead declaration? Next slide, please. Complete 1-page document. It's really simple. This is the picture of it. The Sacramento Law Library has a great example on their website. You fill out the form and then you have it notarized. You take it to the county recorder's office, which is just an office that all counties have where they keep records on properties. And the cost varies county by county. You can check with your recorder's office. In Alameda County, it's around $177 to file this homestead declaration.
We did have a question in the chat that came up that was in response to Noah's presentation. So I'm going to pull up the chat question. During
Yep.
forbearance, does the homeowner accumulate extra interest rather than the quote normal / regular interest?
No. So when you're getting charged interest, you're getting charged interest on the principal amount. And whatever unpaid interest you have doesn't get added to that principal amount. So the short answer is no, you're not paying extra interest. The longer answer is that what you're probably thinking about would be called compounded interest, which is where whatever you're being charged in interest gets added to your principal, and then you pay interest on that. And that doesn't happen in a forbearance. A forbearance is an agreement, so you actually shouldn't be charged late fees either, and you shouldn't be charged. It shouldn't show up on your credit report as late payments. It's an agreement to allow you to pay late. And yes, you aren't charged special interest, just your regular interest.
But no, can you comment on the fact that could be different if you, roll your forbearance into like a loan modification or something of that nature?
Right. So a forbearance is you have the existing loan, right? So you have the loan that you've already agreed to, and it's just accumulated unpaid monthly payments under that existing loan. What a modification does is it brings your loan current. And the way that it usually does that in all of the programs now is by taking all of your unpaid interest and what they call capitalizing it. So essentially you get a new loan that pays off your existing loan plus your unpaid interest, and that new loan is in a greater amount. Now your modification in the long run should be more affordable, but what it does ultimately, in other words, because a modification is supposed to allow you to make payments that are affordable based on your income. That's the idea behind it. And usually that means they're reducing your interest rate or extending your loan term. But it does increase the amount of principal that you're paying interest on, because they're taking the whatever's unpaid and making it part of a brand new loan.
We have another question from Evan. Can you make up the past due payments on your mortgage by filing a Chapter 13 bankruptcy and paying the past due amount over 5 years?
Theoretically, yes. That's something you would absolutely want to, if you're going to do a Chapter 13 in particular, you would absolutely want to consult with a bankruptcy attorney. You can participate in our consumer rights clinics, and we can give referrals and some basic information on that. But I would suggest, if that's your main reason for wanting to file, that you first talk to a housing counselor. Well, first talk to your mortgage servicer and then to a housing counselor to figure out if you have a modification that would work better for you. Because essentially it's going to do the same thing. What a Chapter 13 does is sort of gives you a repayment, the ability to make a repayment. So remember we talked about repayment is you pay your monthly payment, your net regular monthly payment, and then an additional amount over time that allows you to catch up with the amount that you're behind. But you can do the same thing through a modification. It's a lot less damaging to your credit and cheaper over time. And so that's not to say that you would never want to do a Chapter 13, but if that's your main reason to allow you to repay your mortgage, I would strongly recommend looking into your other options first.
Well, and Noah, Evan is an attorney, not to call you out, Evan. I know you can't speak for yourself at the moment, but if you're answering that from an attorney perspective, attorney to attorney, what would you suggest they do for their client?
You mean in that situation?
Yes.
I mean, well, so if we were helping with the mortgage itself, I would reach out to the mortgage servicer. You have to get a third party authorization, right? It's important, and we'll talk about this for the homeowner as well. You don't want to give an authorization to or like a power of attorney to somebody where they speak for you, but you can give an authorization to a third party so that they can also communicate with your mortgage company. And then, you want to look into, you can contact the loss mitigation department of whoever the mortgage servicer is. It's important to know what kind of mortgage it is. Certainly, if you have some specific questions around that, you can reach out to me as a consumer. You can schedule an appointment with our clinic, and we can talk about your options and some resources. And as an attorney, you can obviously reach out to us directly, and we can kind of show you what the information we have on the various programs available under each type of mortgage. Hopefully that helps.
Are there any members of the audience that have a question for any of the panelists? We will be sending out both a link to the recording of the video and a copy of the PowerPoint to everybody. We will include email addresses for all our presenters. They will be included as part of the PowerPoint as well. We have any questions from our participants? Either go into the Q&A or chat. Not seeing any. Are there any final comments from the panelists?
I would just say that.
Please
Right.
unvideo yourself so we can see you.
Of course. I would just say that right now there are more options than there have been in a long time in terms of dealing with these kinds of issues. And there are also a lot more of these issues than there have been in, about 12 years. So it definitely makes sense to have these conversations with other people. Call us, reach out to us, email us. We're happy to have those conversations as well. But there are new pieces of the puzzle that might be able to help. And there's always the ability to negotiate. Even Noah and I were talking about the disaster programs. So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac both have disaster forbearance programs that are pretty advantageous if you qualify. You can find them on their website. Literally just Google them. It's pretty simplistic to do. It's a one-page thing. It's not like the 20 pages that they make you fill out at the bank. So, if you're in a tough spot or if a client's in a tough spot, reach out to us, talk to us, see what kind of creative utilization we can do of the law in this situation, because I know people will need it.
Any final words from our other panelists? Cara, Noah, Rachel, Sally? Hearing none. And I don't see any last questions in the Q&A or the chat. So thank you, Noah. So we will get this posted and get it out, and all these organizations, we will send it out to our different lists so you can see it. And everybody is available for questions, and you can contact them. So thank you, everybody, and have a great evening.
Thank you for attending. Much appreciated.
See some
Thank you,
faces. There's
everyone.
Cara. Come on, Noah, Rachel, Sally, jump in. Well, Sally's trying. There we go. There's the team. There's the dream team right there.
All right.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks
Take
all.
care.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Stay safe.
Wonderful
Thank
evening.
you.
Bye.
Right.